Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Agree or Disagree, the podcast. My name is Kevin Olenick, sitting here in a non-rainy, non-snowy Richmond, British Columbia. You can follow me on Twitter at KEVOLE. You can Agree or Disagree the podcast on Facebook. You can also check out the podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker.com, KEVOLE. Type in Agree or Disagree the podcast. You will find all of the podcasts there. You can also listen Wednesdays, 8 o'clock Pacific on Powercast 97.9. Internet radio on TuneIn. And very soon, you will have a website to go to called kevinolenick.com. We'll get into that. Maybe we'll talk about it on this, who knows, but we'll get into that at some point. But because our topic today is business and entrepreneurship. Now, whether it be economic, depending on where you live and the economy as it is, here in Vancouver, you need a few jobs to get ahead, some feel. Personal, or just having some sort of idea, or any other reason, the term side hustle has become part of our vernacular. And sometimes the side hustle turns into an idea of small business. Ideas and concepts percolate in minds, but questions do linger. How to start? Where to start? What do I need to know? What don't I know? What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? Our guest today can help us with that. She has her own small business in Camrose, Alberta. She is a public speaker, an entrepreneur, and the host of the podcast, Fox Talks Business, which you can listen bi-weekly wherever you get your podcasts as well. Her name is Tanya Corrigan-Fox, and she's joining me on the line today on Zoom. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. I'm excited.
Well, so do we start with we were joking off air that we should start maybe with a racy question. Is that the way to?
Sure. I'm an open book.
Okay. I'm not going to start with a racy question.
Too scared of my answer, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you might be able to throw something from Camrose to Richmond that far, so. But maybe to start, how did you start? What got you into the business mindset?
I think when I was really young, I kind of was like one of those typical kids that I started a lemonade stand. And what sort of set it apart is I had a couple of kids that were in my neighborhood around my same age that came and they said that they wanted to help. So I was like, sure, you can, serve the lemonade to the people and stuff. And then, I would leave and go and play and I would come back and fill up their lemonade. And then I kind of give them a cut afterwards. And then the next weekend, I saw a couple of the kids having a lemonade stand and I thought, oh, well, good for them. And then at the end of the day, they came over and they're like, we did really good. Here's some money from you from what we got. And of course, being a kid, I was just like, woohoo, free money. But in hindsight, I thought, okay, I'm either going to be like a kingpin of, the lemonade stands in the neighborhood, or I'm going to become an entrepreneur. So the kingpin thing didn't really work out, but I ended up kind of really enjoying getting people started in business and sort of getting them off on their own. And that's kind of, where it all kind of started from. And then when I got old enough to actually start something of my own, I decided that was what I wanted to do. I did try, I tried the 9-to-5 jobs, and I worked in the government in the audit bureau. But I'm a really bad employee, I have to say. So I don't, now it just comes to fear of, I have to make my businesses work because I have no idea who would hire me out in the real world. So
you said businesses. Tell us businesses that you were working at, because I said business and you used the word businesses. So clarify that for us.
Yeah, I'm I really collect them is kind of what seems to happen. So,
like stamps, but they're businesses.
Yeah, but with more time. So when I first started, the very first business I ever had was an accounting and bookkeeping company, which I still have today. So I started that in 1998. So I'm really dating myself, but it's kind of come with me along the way. So I still have a few clients that I have kept, over the years. So I have that. My husband and I together own a Taekwondo studio here in town. So that runs primarily in the evenings. And then I've got, my speaking and then my podcast and that. So though I'm down to 3, which is good. I've been up to 5 once, but I have a family now, so I'm trying to calm down a little bit.
That's fair. That's understandable. I mean, there are only 24 hours in a day, so trying to work 27 in a day can be tough.
It can, but I'm a workaholic. Like, most people, I'm in my 40s, so people are like, you thinking about retirement? And I'm like, no, I'm going to work until I die. Happily work until I die.
That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, I can kind of relate to that. Now, you mentioned as a kid that you talked about having a lemonade stand and deciding to be the kingpin, or which I'm very glad that you're not the kingpin, but you kind of had you went the entrepreneurial route, and you also said that you were not one that fits the 9 to 5. So I'm curious, and you have children, so I think that this is an interesting perspective. Be interested in your perspective. Is entrepreneurship something that is born, or something that can be taught?
That's a tough. Yes, I think it can. I think you can learn anything if you set your mind to it. But I do think that there are some key things that are just sort of in your nature, being a self-starter, seeing the wonder in the world and really trying to explore things, those kids that, take things apart just to see how they work. And, the ones that are, just do have that drive to kind of do the lemonade stands or, sell their stuff. It's just something that's sort of, it's built into your DNA, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's all day. I mean, you can't leave it at the office and then just be like, man, it's someone else's problem. It's everything is your problem. So I think a lot of people, love the idea of owning their own business when they think, oh, it'll be so great. I can make my own hours. I can do what I want. And, those are the people that you're like, boy, you're going to get just eaten up and spit out at the end of this. Because it's not, right? It's like the guy who opens a bar because he thinks it'll be like the show Cheers, right? Where everybody's going to come in and he's just going to sit and talk, and then he opens the bar and realizes you're the one that has to deal with the drunk people and the fights and the people throwing up in the bathroom. And it's not only the good stuff; it's the hidden stuff that nobody tells you about.
Yeah, that too. But like in terms of kids, in terms of like if you have a child, is there something that you would notice that because I mean, a topic I haven't approached a lot of is kids and money. I do think is a very important topic, especially, and we're part of the same club that talks. We're not happy about debt,
right?
But how is there a natural inclination for some kids to be more business minded, or is it one of those things that you think you can instill some values in your kids that will be more business minded, or like what are your thoughts on that?
I think that kids who are sort of raised in that where their parents, or at least one of their parents, is an entrepreneur, are probably more likely to be more open to it. I wasn't. Both of my parents, sort of did the 9 to 5 job, and my brother does. Like that, he kind of sort of went that way. I didn't fit into that box. I always wanted to do stuff my own way. When I was a kid, I always wanted to, if I saw a store running, I would always think of different ideas, different window displays that they could do, and different, that's kind of the way my mind always went. Whereas my brother was very like, well, this is the way they presented it, this is the way it is. So I think those kids that are more apt to sort of think outside of the box are more likely to sort of, maybe not want to fit into that, stereotypical, job. And the ones that kind of show more leadership skills, are more likely to sort of be, entrepreneurs. And we're seeing that more and more. I mean, small businesses are becoming more popular, that people are, are starting them up, but starting them up later in life as well. We're seeing that a lot, in the seniors. Instead of retiring, they're starting their own businesses. So I think really looking at your kid and seeing, if they are that leader, of the group, if they are sort of more interested in the background stuff, to really encourage that. And if you yourself aren't an entrepreneur as a parent, find somebody that, is willing to mentor them and to keep, that spirit alive. Because even if they don't end up starting their own business, what they learn from that can be transposed to so many different things in their life.
Yeah, there are lessons there. And I'm wondering a little bit, and we've had Barb Silva on a few times on the podcast, and we've talked a little bit about education, but I do wonder in my head how, as a culture, as a school system, we are encouraging this kind of entrepreneurship. Because it feels to me, when I went to school, and we're in the same age category, when I went to school, it was, you do your high school, you do your post-secondary or university, college, or whatever, and then you get a job. That was the pattern that we were taught. And you're right. We'll get into this a little bit later, because you do have actually a podcast on this as well that you just recently did. But that idea isn't sitting for everyone really well for a lot of people. I think it's created some boredom. And I wonder, as a school system, how that changes for kids that are not patterned for the 9-to-5 job. Because I do think that there are kids in high school, kids that are not patterned for the 9-to-5, or the redundancy of how we have our school system. I can go on a whole tangent about how I don't necessarily think the school system perfectly works, but like in terms of an entrepreneur, as from a school perspective, do you think it's something that you're seeing being developed, or can it be developed?
I think it can be developed. I don't think it is. I think the school system is still kind of fairly similar to when we went to school. I mean, it's like you said, right? They go to school. What do you want to be? Does it fit in, one of these stereotypical, do you want to be a nurse? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be an accountant? All those sort of stereotypical roles. I think some schools are doing a good job of getting local businesses in to talk about it, especially with the, high school students of, what does it mean to own your own business? What are the good things? What are the bad things about it and stuff? But I think a lot more could be done with it. And when I was in Ottawa, I actually developed a program for the high school there, where the kids actually, that's what they did. So they all got to sort of pick a business, and they had to run that business for, the one semester that they had. And so they had to go through all of the stuff. We would throw different things at them, like, oh, your window's broken, now you had this, or you had a bad customer that complained about you. And so they would kind of, run this business, and some would fail and some would get it. But you'd see those ones that would really take that project on, similar to, when they gave you the bag of flour and you had to take care of the baby. It was kind of like a course run like that. And it really helped those kids that really took that project on and had a lot of fun with it, to show them that too is an option for them, that it doesn't just have to be, you're going to go get a job and work for someone else, that this is a viable career path for people. And I think schools need to start integrating that more. But I think business owners too have to start lending a voice to their school and doing what they can to be present in those schools. So, go in and see if you can do presentations and stuff like that to encourage those students that are interested in that. And I think most schools are pretty open to having, people come in and talk, but I don't think we're there yet. I think we're a far way off.
Yeah. Yeah. But we're planting a seed here, I think.
Exactly.
We're making miracles on our podcasts here.
And I think like anything, right? I mean, it's a slow system schools are a slow system to change. And we're kind of seeing it because we're starting to see that they're realizing not all kids learn the same. And we need to change that. Well, not all kids want the same things out of life, and that's okay. If all you want to do is, just work to get a paycheck so you can travel or you can do whatever, that's fine. And if what you want to do is start your own business and build an empire, that's fine too, but we have to encourage all aspects. It's kind of down to the debate, where we're starting to see more people not look down upon the trade schools. Anybody who wanted to go into a trade, it was like, oh, well, that's what you do when you have no other options. So I think we're going to get there a little bit farther with that. And then I think that, the idea of being an entrepreneur is something viable will come in. But again, who knows if we'll see it in our lifetime.
Let's hope so.
I hope so, but...
Yeah. I mean, we need a kingpin or two.
And it's always fun, I think a lot of lessons are learned when you own your business. Some of them, not the easy way, but yeah.
There's about 3 paths I want to go that you've led me down, and
Okay.
I want to try to take all three of them.
Okay.
But I think one is about lessons, because this is from my own personal perspective, being, I want to say I'm a podcasterpreneur, if that's a word. I'm making it up as a...
We'll make it one. Sure.
We'll make it one.
Wikipedia, you can make your own words.
Yes, podcastpreneur. But the struggle that I have had, and this is kind of going down 2 paths at once, but it's this whole idea about identity and because people ask, what do you do? What do you, and I say I'm a podcaster. Well, how do you make money? And of course, I look at my bank account and, I then cry. But, so that people ask, are you working? Which is kind of that language there. So that's one thing. But let's rest that, because I think lessons, what are some lessons or things that people need to be aware of to start a business?
I think being realistic about it, and really ask other people that are in business, and ask a couple of times, because, it is a little bit of a closed group, and not a lot of people who are in business. You ask somebody, what's it like to have your own business? And they go, oh, it's really good. And then you go, what's it really like? And they go, there's some crap days.
Mm.
And it's not for the faint of heart, and you need to know what your idea is, and you need to be willing to get out of your circle. Because if you have a very supportive, circle of friends and family and stuff, and you ask them, you say, I have this idea for a business. What do you think? They're all going to say, oh, we would totally buy that from you. That would be great. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to, make a living from it, or make a living from it for very long. So I think you really need to be realistic about what you're getting yourself into, and do a lot of research on what it is that you want to start, and what all entails on going into a business. Because there is a lot that people just don't tell you about, because, you don't think of it, or people just never ask, right? There's so many people that just start a business and just go, well, I'm just going to open the doors and people will come. And then they open the doors and nobody comes.
Yeah. That's like that set, the Simpsons episode where Flanders opened the Leftorium.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It was a brilliant idea at the time, but no one came.
Yeah. And two, you have to know your strengths, and that's a hard thing. That's, when you were talking about lessons, one of the hardest things was, really refining what my strengths are. And people might go, well, that's really easy. I can tell you what my strengths are. But there were some things that I was like, oh, I'm really good at, social media. And then I realized I'm not really good at social media. I do need help with that. So you have to be willing to be able to say, no, I'm not as good as what I thought I was at that. And I need help now. And then, have the ability to be able to find where you're going to get that help and find those other experts. And the thing that I find about entrepreneurs is, they're usually really willing to take you under their wing and go, let's grow together. Let's create this, community that we can help each other. So you've got to find those other entrepreneurs that are willing to do that, because you're going to come up against the head of competition as well, where people will be like, don't talk to me, don't look at me, I'm not going to help you because you growing means I fail. So it's, like I said, it's not for the faint of heart. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff that, it is 24 hours. You don't get to just walk away because you have all of the stuff that you need to think about. And it can be lonely, especially if you're running it by yourself. It can feel like, you're taking on the world by yourself and nobody else understands, especially when you're in a family that, doesn't have other entrepreneurs in it. People who have always worked a job truly, they say they understand, but they truly, they don't understand. Because they'll say stuff like you said, no, when you tell somebody you have a job, like if somebody comes to you and they say, if somebody were to say, hey, Kevin, what do you do? And you say, oh, I work at whatever, this pipe mill. They don't go, well, how much do you make? How do you make a living? I mean, they never ask you that. So I don't understand why people ask entrepreneurs that. I always ask them, what do you do? Oh, how much money do you make? They usually look at you like, well, that's kind of a personal question. I'm like, well, it was when you asked me too. Like, it's none of your business.
Yeah, it's there's so much there, and it's this culture of competition that, and there's a reality to it, because we'll get into you living in a small town, but mm-hmm. there is a competition. It's just there's nothing that we can do to avoid, you want to do a little bit better than someone else. But I like the term collaborative competition. Yeah. Let's collaborate and compete and join together. I feel like that's better, and we're not looking down on how people are doing, but we're building people up to be better. Because if you're better, I'm better. Exactly. And I think too that my mom used to always say, be careful whose hands you step on climbing up the ladder, because those are the asses you have to kiss on the way back down. Mm. So, and that kind of always stuck with me. Right. And yeah, the competition is crazy. And even with somebody who's not in the same, genre or the same niche as you, there are those people that, will just fight you, tooth and nail and don't want to work with you because they just can't, they don't see the benefit in it. But I think, if the store next to me is really, really busy, that helps me. If I'm, in a mall and the mall is really busy, that helps me. So you need to sort of have that broader view of things, that if we're all doing really well, it's going to help each other. Mm-hmm. And if one of us is down, let's all work together to lift them back up, because we're always stronger as a group than we are as an individual. Yeah. Now, your family, if correct me if I'm wrong, your husband is an entrepreneur as well? He does both, actually. So he does have like a day job, as we call it, and where he works. He's a manager at a local grocery store here in town, and then at night he runs our Taekwondo studio in the evenings. Okay, so but there's an entrepreneur with you guys running it together. There's obviously an entrepreneurial connection. Absolutely. There. So that obviously helps you a bit. It helps you guys both kind of learn from each other and feed off each other's ideas. And it helps too because he understands.
We've got friends of ours who, one works, sort of a day job, and then she has her own business at home, and that argument comes up a lot, because they'll say, well, you just sit at home all day. And meanwhile, she's like, are you kidding me? Like, I work longer hours than you do, and sort of that head battle kind of can come together with that. So yes, I'm very fortunate that he understands, what it's like, and, the ups and downs that you can have and stuff like that. And it's nice for me because I can talk to him and he understands, some of the background stuff, and, and can give me ideas that, will, can help to better what it is that I'm doing.
What about your self-talk? And I'm just will share, like, back on Monday, I didn't feel like I did a lot. Like I was, it was a bit of a quieter day for some reason. And I got a little frustrated with myself because I was like, I didn't do much Monday. And I have days sometimes like that. And I had my personal frustration. I need to be doing more.
Yeah.
And as the weeks went on, I've been a bit better about that. But how about how's your self-talk? As I'm sure that's very important for you to be going forward. I stumbled through that question, but you knew what I meant.
That's okay. I know what you meant. Yeah. It has gotten a lot better, definitely, over the years. And frankly, just kind of as I got older, I was a huge person of the to-do list, and I would never finish anything because I'd sit there at the beginning of the day. And I mean, you can think of a lot of stuff to put on a list, and unrealistic, right? I mean, you get 20 things that even if you were to add it up, like you said, it's 32 hours of work you're trying to cram into, 8 hours of workspace or 12 hours of workspace. So now the main thing that I do is I will sit, in the morning, first thing in the morning, I sit down and I just come up with my top 3 things that I want to accomplish for the day. And I have an entrepreneur friend, and we text each other our list in the morning. Here's my top 3 things. And she's kind of my accountability partner. So we can check in with each other and say, hey, how's it going? Where are you on your list? And I find that helps to keep me more focused on what it is that I want to accomplish in that day without feeling overwhelmed or without feeling like I've let myself down because I only did 3 things on my list of 20 things. And I feel more of a sense of accomplishment when I'm like, I did everything I set out to do today. But I also allow myself to have those days that it's okay. Like, I just didn't get a lot done, or I get sidetracked. I just had that the other day. I was trying to work on something and I got an email that popped in about somebody wanting to be on the podcast, and off I went. And I spent half my entire day researching, and then 9 o'clock rolls around and my husband and my son walk in the door, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what happened to the last 6 hours. So for me, those top 3 things, and that's, once I finish those, then if my day goes awry, it's okay. But that's kind of what I really try to focus on. And I find it's really helped me to, stay on task, to feel that sense of accomplishment as I cross those things off my list, and to give myself a little bit of a grace when I go, I got 2 out of 3. It's not too bad.
There we go. Yeah. What about also, because you are working with a lot of women, how is it for women in business right now? Like, what are you seeing as some of the challenges? I do see that there are a lot of women networks now in terms of businesses, which is great. But what else are you seeing out there? I don't think I'm going to ask the obvious, in a sense, probably the obvious question is, what are some of the struggles out there? But from your perspective, really, what it's been progress, I guess, and where are some areas that still need to be worked on?
Okay, this answer is not going to make me too popular with the women. We're crazy. I got to say that right off the bat. You
said it, not me, right? So
I know. There you go. I'm just sharing it for you. Yes, there are a lot of groups that are out there of women working together, but I think we're also one of our biggest competitions among each other is that we really do want to share and we really do want to help each other out, but there's that little bit of competition that's built into us that, sometimes, that green-eyed jealousy monster kind of, does, rears its ugly head. But I think it is getting a lot better. I think we're starting to see, with these groups and people supporting each other, we're starting to see more communities start where the main goal is to lift each other up. Now, with that being said, I'm a very outspoken person and have been my entire life. So although I've seen and I've been in situations where I have felt that being a woman has, sort of not been something that's allowed me to move ahead, I've also been the one that will forge through and, doesn't allow, somebody to say, oh, it's okay. You just sit there and listen, sweetheart. I'm the one that goes, okay, let's educate you here. And we're going to have a little lesson here in how smart I actually am. So, I think it goes, a little bit of both ways, but
I sense you want to say something, and
yeah,
I think it's important to say.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do as people in business. And I find sometimes it gets separated too much where we talk about women in business and men in business. And really at the end of the day, we are human beings in business. And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman or what race you are or what age you are, that needs to stop being a factor. We just need to be human beings in business helping each other out.
I'm a person that absolutely believes that there needs to be some real support for, and I've talked about this a lot, I think there needs to be more women voices in broadcasting. There was a recent, out here in Vancouver, there was a recent change in one of the radio stations, and I kind of said to a couple of friends of mine that I felt a little disappointed that there wasn't a woman host. I do believe that there needs to be some progress there. So I'm absolutely with you. But what kind of scares me, to be honest with you, and I may get in trouble here, Tanya, so we're going down together, is feeling, and I'm not trying to say this in a victim mentality, but you're right. I think support is support. Mm-hmm. And there's probably there are probably some different challenges for sure when a man starts a business and a woman starts a business. There are. I will admit that, absolutely. But at the same time, there's also some things that we can learn from each other that I think are important as well.
And the other thing too is that there's some advantages to being a woman and starting a business too. And that never gets talked about. There's a lot of grants out there that are available simply because you're a woman and you're wanting to start a business. And even depending on what area of business it is that you're wanting to start, there's a lot of those opportunities as well, that there's all these grants that no one's accessing, but you have to be a woman to get it. And you have to be a woman who owns the majority of the business to be able to access these grants. So there's that side that nobody really talks about either. And, I'm very much a person who says, if a job has certain things that you have to be able to do, and you can do those things, you should absolutely get the job and what its entitled pay is. Yeah. But if you can't do those things, you don't get the job, and you can't complain about it. And the best example I can use is if you are a 90-pound girl and you want to become a fire person, I'll try to be politically correct because I'm not. I don't really want you, I am not a 90-pound person. I don't really want you trying to drag me out of a burning house. Now, if you can lift me, I don't care at that moment what you look like or what body parts you have, just get me out of the house.
Yeah. Save my life.
Just save me. I don't care who you are. Just save me at that point. So I think, we need to head more into, being more inclusive of everybody, and that as women, we do still need to have our voices heard. We need to not be scared to venture into those areas that have typically been male dominated, just because either that's the time or that's just who's been interested in it. We need to start encouraging our young girls to not be scared to do that, to believe that they can do anything. But on the other hand, we also need to educate the ones that are already in those roles to be inviting of, say females coming, like you had mentioned, the broadcasters, of having, that open arm kind of thing of saying, hey, we want you guys to come. We want you guys to be this. And that goes right back to our school systems. I remember being in school, science was the big thing then. And so they would have like a lady come in who was a scientist, and she would talk about how awesome her job is. And there's quite a few girls in my class that really enticed. So I think those women that are in those roles that were, sort of quote unquote male jobs, need to start being a voice and saying, you can do this, and really getting that encouragement out there for other people, to join and to get into that atmosphere.
Yeah, I agree. And I just to get onto the grant part for a little bit, when I was going to school, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about older entrepreneurs, but it was fascinating to me, the amount of scholarships out there, but the age limit on who can get it must be 20, must be 23, must be 25. Which was none of those ages when I went to school. And to me, I mean, I understand what they're trying. I understand the intent around that. And of course you can still apply and write for those, but it doesn't, it's not supporting those that want to make older in life or later in life that want to make a change. And that's the reality of life is we go through changes. Our life is not linear. It changes for a number of different reasons. And it's kind of unfortunate we have that block that way.
I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're starting to see some changes in that, because we're starting to see a lot of, younger people, starting their own businesses and, heading out for those grants and those loans and stuff. I mean, it's still going to be a bit of a battle, but you have to be prepared for that, and, and just keep fighting and keep trying, because you'll get there eventually. And if it's meant to be, the universe will hand it to you, but it's not always on a silver platter. Sometimes it's, underneath a pile of cow dung,
yes,
and you got to dig it out. So are you willing to do that?
Yeah. And also the other thing that I wanted to say on this too is there are some men that learn and are connected better to women, and some women that connect and learn better from men. It's just it's just part of our society and our culture. That's just the way that some are wired.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's important. Again, I'm not saying, if for anyone that's listening, I'm not saying that I don't think we're saying that we shouldn't have these all women things, because we do agree with that, but that doesn't always fit everybody, is what I'm saying.
I think and agree with you. And I think that, if you are absolutely for having a group that doesn't allow men, you also can't be against the group of men that doesn't allow women.
Yeah.
And that sometimes happens. They'll say, no, men aren't allowed. And then a men's group says women aren't allowed. And then those same women go, well, that's not fair.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Yeah.
If you get to have it, they get to have it.
Yeah. And there's been do I want to go here, Tanya? Probably.
You can always cut it out. The joy of editing, eh?
I don't edit, so if we go here, I'm getting there's a narrative being, and I do think that this relates to business, because there
Okay.
is this narrative, it is on track. It may feel off track, but it is on track. There's this narrative out there that the white male is living a life of privilege. And there is a natural privilege that a white male has. Don't get me wrong. But that isn't always the story. And I've been on a couple of debates in social media where I've been called out for privilege. And I've heard a couple of other, and that, like, if you want to have a conversation with me about my privilege story, we can talk about the days that I went to the food bank and walked about 10 to 20 blocks and carried a huge box back to my apartment. We can have that conversation if you want to talk about privilege. But I think that gets just, it's very dangerous an assumption that because someone is of a certain stature, that everything has went well for them no matter what.
I agree with you. And, you just don't know. And that's the thing. You don't know by looking. Think of, social media is the prime example of this. I always think of the picture of, it looks like someone's taking a photo of their legs on a beach. Meanwhile, it's somebody who just has their knuckles up on a screen saver that looks like the beach. And you think, oh, here this person is sitting on a beach. Meanwhile, it's not. It's photoshopped or it's faked or whatever. So just because, and I've seen this a lot too in accounting, I have had clients that, I've gone to their house and it is this, like 1 bedroom, 800 square foot home, doesn't have a lot of stuff in it, and they are millionaires. Mm-hmm. And I've gone to, huge houses where there's 6, 7 bedrooms, 4-car garages, and they're struggling. They don't know how they're going to put food on the table because, they're living way beyond their means. So I think we need to stop assuming that, what somebody shows on the outside totally depicts their whole life, because it doesn't. And you don't know what that person has had to do to get to the point that they are. I think everybody has to sacrifice something in their life. And it's unfair of us to just assume that somebody who has, something got it just because they're privileged. You don't know what their story is. And I think it's unfair for us to assume we know everything that someone else has gone through.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of my point with I think with the support network, and why I do think it connects with business, because it's, there's an assumption of success and failure upon what we look at when it's not. And this envy, we're going on another rabbit track. Well, I want to talk about small towns here in a second, but this envy of why this person is successful or not and how they've gotten there it's hard work. Like you are watching what they've done on social media, or you've read a story. That's what you know what you read. That's not their everyday life.
Well, and you're seeing, like, especially with social media, you're seeing what they want you to see, but you don't see the nights, where, and I've said this to people before when I teach and when I talk on stage, no one is going to see the days that you're in the corner, of your space or of your office, and you're crying because everything is falling apart around you, and you just don't know it, like, where are you? Why are you doing this? Why is it so hard? And you have those moments that nobody sees. They see the end. They see your triumphs and stuff. But there is that component behind it. Nobody who is successful does not have huge stories of massive failure. Mm-hmm. They all do, because they know that to succeed, you have to have failure, because that's we only learn when we're in failure. We don't learn when everything is going good. So more people need to remember that, and know that just because somebody looks like they have everything doesn't necessarily mean that they do. They could have absolutely nothing. And the person who, looks like they're the most popular on Facebook could be the loneliest person in the world.
Yeah.
So We just, you just don't know. So just, don't assume. And, when you're in that situation, my mom always used to say to me, what other people think of you is none of your business. And it's hard, but I've had to do that a lot in my life. And I've had to be like, it's okay if you don't like me. I'm a very strong personality. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. It's okay. It's okay for someone not to like me.
Speaking of that, you are in a small town in Camrose where I lived in a small town for a small part of time. I know from that experience that it can be an interesting thing. And the population of Camrose, I am wanting to say, is about 20,000 people.
Yeah, I think we're just under that.
Yeah.
Between 17 and 20, yeah, somewhere around there.
What's the challenge in that, being in a business in a smaller town?
You've got a lot less reach because it's just demographic, right? There's a lot less people, that are right in your area. And so the competition can sometimes get a little harder because if you have two stores that, open right beside each other, now in our town, for example, we have a lot of liquor stores, like a lot. For 20,000 people, I think we have 17 or 18 liquor stores.
Oh, wow.
That might be how we're getting through.
There's one liquor store for pretty much every 1,000 people then.
Yeah. A liquor store for everybody.
Yeah.
It should be our new slogan.
You get a liquor store. You get a liquor store.
But, it is, for just that, I find that sometimes the competition, it's not that it's worse. I think that it's more personal than in a big town. I think if you were to move your business anywhere, you'd have competition no matter where you go. But I think in a small town, it can get a little bit more personal because, everybody kind of knows everybody. And, you get those cliques like you do anywhere, right? Where you get, the certain people that hang out together. And I always thought that when I got out of high school, that would end. It doesn't end.
No.
Never ends.
No.
So I think it's can be a little bit more of a struggle, but on the other side of it too, there is that community, that sense of community where everybody is there, to help each other. And when you are hurting, you do have those people where you know your neighbor, your business neighbor, and they're always there to lend a hand. And you're not just, another box store coming in kind of thing.
So I imagine that they're, in a sense, the pressure part of that, of success and failure, does that play into this at all? Or
I think so. I mean, I know when I closed, I had a retail craft store, and I decided to close it, not because it wasn't doing well. It was doing really well, but I just had an opportunity to do other stuff in my life, and I wanted to take it. And when I decided to close, there was both. There was those people that came out and said, we're going to miss you, from the business community that said, we're going to miss you, but we're so excited for your new opportunity. And I was very open with people and telling them why I was closing and stuff. But I still had that, other businesses that, had said everything from, I'm divorcing my husband and I'm moving back to Ontario. I was going bankrupt. That's why I was closing. Customers would come in and tell me this, and, luckily I kind of have a strong exterior, and I'd kind of laugh at most of them, but there were a few that were kind of hurtful because, I thought that they were on my side, and I thought, if anybody would understand what I'm going through, and that closing your business for any reason is never an easy decision, I would have thought it would have been somebody else in business. So it really did surprise me that those were the same people that, were sort of starting these rumors for the sake of talking.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate to what's been going. That doesn't help. But especially it is ultimately surprising too when it's someone you think should know better.
Well, yeah, and that's what it was for me. Luckily the ones that were supportive and the ones that were there. But I think when you go through any difficult time, in your life, whether it be business or personal, I think people show their true colors, and as long as we can remember that, and I'm not bitter towards them. They were obviously going through something, and I knew it wasn't true, but it's you have to know where you're coming from. You have to really have a good sense of who you are and what you stand for, and you have to be willing to stand up for those beliefs. Because if you don't, I mean, they'll chew you up and spit you out. So you kind of do get a little bit of a harder shell as an entrepreneur, I think, than what others sometimes do, because you have to.
Yeah. And then especially when it comes to dealing with customers, and we're going to play something here. This is from a podcast that Tanya did called "The Customer is Always Right." So we'll just share this story with you. This may take a couple minutes, but I do want you to listen to this as we'll come back.
So the first example I have for you is a famous story. So any of you who know me really well probably have already heard this story. It's one of my favorite ones to tell because it's just a funny story and everybody laughs at it. But there was a lesson to be learned here. So my husband and I own a Taekwondo studio. And in this studio, we used to sell water bottles. Now, they were just your typical plastic water bottles with our logo on them. It had sort of the pop top that you would sort of suck your water out of. And there wasn't anything super fancy at them. They were $5. And we had one of our students come up to us, a little boy, and he said that his mom said it was okay that he was allowed to buy one of our water bottles. And he was so excited. So he handed me the $5. I gave him the water bottle and said to him, make sure when you bring this home, you get your mom or dad to wash it, and then you'll be good to go. So he was excited, and off he went out the door to meet his parents in the car. So I don't hear anything about it. And all of a sudden, the next day, his mom comes in. And in her hand, she has the water bottle. Now, she wasn't looking like she was kind of having a good day. And she kind of came up to my counter and slapped the water bottle down on it pretty hard. So right off, I'm kind of thinking, she might not be too happy. So I said, hi, what's going on? And she looks at me and says, you sold this water bottle to my son yesterday. Now, the first thought that ran through my head was, uh-oh, this little boy was not supposed to have that money, nor was he supposed to buy anything. So I said, oh, I'm sorry. He said that he had spoken to you and that he was allowed to buy this water bottle. And she says, well, yeah, he is, but you sold him an empty bottle. And I'm thinking, okay, this has to be a joke. So I'm kind of looking around and I kind of laugh a little bit, a little like, like not really kind of knowing what's going on at that point in time. And she looks at me and goes, I don't think it's funny. You advertised a water bottle and you sold my son a plastic empty bottle. And I'm looking at her and all of these thoughts are going through my head as I'm thinking, she's kidding me, right? So I said, I'm sorry. I'm not understanding what the problem is. And so she holds her hand up to me and says, you sold my son a water bottle with no water. And I'm looking at her and there was kind of this silence between us. And I'm thinking, So I said, well, yes, ma'am, I did. She says, yeah, that's called false advertising. If you're going to advertise a water bottle and then you sell it to a child without the water, what kind of person are you? Now, I have to tell you that immediately I was about ready to throw down with this lady because I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? But I didn't because I thought there has to be something bigger here. So whenever I personally get cornered, I have a very huge sarcastic side of me, and it comes out, and it came out. And this wasn't a good thing. It wasn't the way I should have handled it. But anyways, I did, and it ends up being a funny story. So I look at her and I go, okay, so let's just try to maybe put this in a little bit of perspective, because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. So when you go, say, to Walmart and you buy a juice jug, it doesn't come with juice. And she goes, no, that would be stupid. And I'm like, okay. And when you buy like ice cube trays, they don't come with the ice. And she goes, no, again, that would be stupid. Like looking at her, waiting, hoping that she's going to connect the two, nothing. So she says, so what are you going to do about this? I'm thinking, okay. So I said, you're right. I did sell him a water bottle with no water. We're actually just selling the bottle that it's meant to put water in. So I'm very sorry if he thought it was going to be full of water. I do have some bottled water here. I'm more than happy to give you one if he wants to put it inside his bottle, or I'm happy to go to the bathroom and fill it up with water for you if you would like. How can I make this better? Or I can refund your money. She says, why would I want my money refunded? He wants this water bottle. He bought the water bottle. Now he's just waiting for the water part.
Yeah, so we'll let people listen to the rest of that podcast to get out the rest of that story. But I guess the point of that little 4 to 5 minute interval there is the expectations around what customers are thinking that you should do for them. As how do you balance that out as a business owner? Sorry, I'm sorry. I hope that this person isn't listening, but if you are, that was ridiculous. And I hope you look back on your life in some way, shape, or form, and you go back and regret this deeply, because that was silly.
I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't even remember who the customer is, to be honest with you, anymore. But it's brought me years and years I've told this story so many times. I love it. It's one of my favorite stories. Because it was that lesson for me. When we were talking earlier about lessons to learn, I'm very, very sarcastic, and I have to be careful because it gets me in trouble. Sometimes I'll say stuff that's inappropriate or not politically correct, or, can come off sounding quite rude, which, I thought the juice jug thing was kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, but, yeah, because you bump into that.
But there was some logic to that.
I thought so, yeah. But it probably could have been a bit of a better delivery. But it's having to deal with those situations. There was nothing that I would ever have been able to do to make her feel better. And sometimes at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about your business. It's just this woman had a bad day, and I was the one who caught the brunt of it. So I could have had this situation where it, completely and utterly ruined me and just made me lose faith, lose faith in humanity and all that other stuff. And I just decided instead to, see the humor in it and continuously see the humor in it. And, for years after when that happened, people would come and try to buy, because we still sold the water bottles for quite a few years after. And I would sell it to them and I would say, it's $5 without water. And they would always look at me like, okay. And I would tell them the story of the lady, and we'd always get a good laugh. So although she had a really bad day, she did make a lot of other people happy.
There we go. There you go. But yeah, it's dealing with people in that way. I remember when I was working at Cineplex a few years ago. It's mostly teenagers that work there, and there was me as an adult. And listen, the prices at Cineplex at for the popcorn are ridiculous. Nobody is ever going to argue that.
Yeah.
But it's not the teenager's fault to establish this price. And this lady just went off on her. I sat there and I went, you are yelling at a teenager for the price of popcorn. Just stop and reflect on your life for a moment.
Yeah. And I do say that everybody at some point in their life, and I will do this with my son too, is I will make him get a job in retail just so he's seen it in the store sometimes because he's been there when, I've had those customers that have come in where even at, 10, he's looked at me and went, were they serious? And I'm thinking if a 10-year-old thinks this person is ludicrous, but I think you come across that and people don't realize that. They don't think about, how they're treating people or especially with small business. I find it's even worse. I've probably had, our retail store was open for about 5 years, and I probably had at least 12 people in those 5 years that would come in and try to barter my prices with me. And I was like, and it would make me laugh because I would be like, they would pick like a ball of wool or something. They'd be, how much is this? And I said, well, it's $7.99. And they'd be like, how about $5? And I'm like, how about $8.99? And they'd look at me and they'd go, what? And I go, it's not a flea market. Do you walk into Walmart and do that? Well, yeah, but you're the owner, aren't you? Yeah. But that's the price it is. It's not, and it's just funny sometimes some people's mentalities on it, of saying, well, popcorn it's crazy. Well, it always has been. Why are you surprised? I'm going to get in trouble. I won't say who it is on this one, but we went out to supper with some family members and we went, I think it was like a Humpty's restaurant. And it was for a birthday party or something. And this family member of mine ordered a steak and then proceeded to complain about the steak, right? He was like, this is a horrible steak. I'm not paying for this. I'm like, it's a Humpty's. What were you expecting? Were you expecting it to taste like the keg? You're going to a store that's primarily like breakfast and I don't want to say lower end food, but and you're expecting this giant 5-star gourmet meal, Gordon Ramsay thing. Sometimes we have to put into perspective where we are, you know?
Yeah. Well, not only that too, your point about, the person that says, you're a small business and you're the owner, I can negotiate with you. That's that undermining, well, you're small business, you should take less money. Yeah. And them saying, well, it's a ripoff. Or the other one that I used to get a lot, which used to, drive me crazy, is people would come in and say, well, I can get this cheaper online. Or I'd have people that would come in and take pictures of some of the stuff that I had and say, oh, I'm just going to go buy it online, from someone else. And I thought, it's so insulting. Yeah. Because I'm thinking, are you kidding me? So, so I could have gone two ways. I think most people who owned a business would just let it go. But I wasn't that person. So I'd be like, okay, we're going to have some education. So I would sit down with them and I would say, here's what my price is. Here's what it is online. Here's the exchange rate and the shipping. So at the end of the day, by the time they got this one particular item that I had, it would actually end up costing them more by the time you got exchange and duty and all of that other stuff. And they were like, oh, I didn't realize that. And I was like, well, now you know, it's not always cheaper. Yeah. So yeah. And they're great stories now. They're so fun to share, but in the moment it's hurtful because you've put your life and sometimes you've put everything you have, including all of your money, to try to, bring these items or bring this business or this service to people. And they kind of could care less, about it. Yeah. So that's again where that sort of entrepreneur shell gets built up, where you have to kind of find the humor in the stories that could drive you crazy. Because otherwise, what's the point? It'll just knock you down every chance you get. So they're funny stories now in hindsight. In hindsight, yes. So we kind of got into, we did a little teaser of your podcast. So tell us the motivation about starting a podcast and what that experience has been like for you.
Well, I wanted to, I got an offer when I had the store. I started a YouTube channel because my son is very much into watching YouTube, and he kind of said, "Mom, you need to do this for the store." And so I had started a YouTube channel and started doing videos for my store, Crafty Crafters, and I got an offer from a company to do tutorial videos for them. And long story short, I decided to do it, and that's why I had closed the store. And when I got there, I was just telling stories of different stuff that I had encountered. And one of the guys said, "I love how you tell stories. I could listen to you forever. You should do a podcast." And so I came home from that trip to Toronto, and I looked at my husband. I said, "I'm going to start a podcast." And he went, "What's a podcast?" Because he's not even on Facebook, my husband. So it didn't surprise me that he didn't know what it was. And I said, "Well, you talk." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, you'll make millions. Do that." And I thought after, because I had always been a fan of podcasts and listened to them. And I thought, this is such a good avenue for me to say some of the stuff that people don't say, to be open about, not only the good stuff and the lessons, but, some of the failures that I've had and the lessons that I've learned, because I think sharing those stories helps. Because as entrepreneurs, it can feel really lonely, and you can feel like no one else has gone through this. And I think the more we share our stories, the more help we can give each other, and the more community that we can feel around it. And my mom always said, life is too short to make all of the mistakes. So we need to learn from other people's.
Right. Yeah.
And I have no problem sharing it, because I've had some colossal failures, and I've started some stuff that I don't know what I was thinking, but there was always a lesson. And so I think at the end of the day, if you can learn the lesson from your failure, that failure almost will start to turn itself into a success in the end.
That's true. That's true. And so that's really true. I agree with that. So how do people find the podcast?
So we are on most of the avenues. So they'll just search wherever you're listening, whether it be iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or iHeartRadio, and you're just going to look up Fox Talks Business, and you'll be able to find us there. And we are also on Facebook under Fox Talks Business, and Instagram as well. So, and then our website is foxtalksbusiness.ca, and that has all of the links that you need to everything as well.
Is there anything else that we need to touch on? That you wanted to chat about?
I think if I could get anything across to people, it's you've got to be able to laugh at yourself in the end. And, there's going to be hard days. There's going to be hard years sometimes. But, if you can just sit and find even the smallest nugget of humor in something that's happened, it sure makes the lesson a lot easier to learn. And share those stories. Don't be scared when you're in business and someone, comes to you and asks how things are. Don't be scared to say, "Hey, I need some help." Because if all we ever do is say, "Everything's going good, everything's fine," no one's going to help you, because they think everything's good and everything's fine. So we need to start being okay of saying, "You know what, I need a little bit of help." Because I think people are always willing to help, but you have to be willing to ask.
Very true. Well, I really appreciate this. I hope that the people listening, I think, got a lot out of this, and gets people to check out your podcast. You got a lot of interesting things that we didn't get into. We could spend another 2 hours, but we have lives to live, and we can always do this again, right?
Yes, I love coming on, and I love your show. I listen to it all the time, and I'm always try to be the first one to click on your
thank you,
on your posts, on your the polls.
Oh, well, thank you. At least I have a listener. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure there are others.
You do, lifelong fan.
You can follow me, KVOLE, of course, on podcasts, iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast as well. Just search Agree or Disagree podcast. Soon, KevinOlenick.com will be coming out as well. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.